This was bothering me for quite some time. I have feeling that someone was expecting me also to have my opinion on capitalism versus socialism, since I originate from, was born in socialism. It was somehow hanging as some kind of my moral duty to bring forward my experiences from living in socialism and all of my knowledge generated in times and around that system, versus capitalism that I equally studied. And I wasn't rushing very much about it, because none of the systems are actually perfect. Socialism certainly is bringing much higher control over the entire situation. It is bringing forward the interest of state, the state formation, and it was very much about bringing forward national economy. And because of that, I profoundly liked it, and I think that everyone in state liked it. What we didn't like about it, um, it was very much imported. It was very much some kind of experiment, and it was political regime. The political side of it, discrimination of certain people. There was, for example, naked island created for blue collar intelligence that would not be online with state level of politics, for a variety of reasons, different ideological belief systems, but very often certainly just hunted down like beasts and set up on some kind of hardline transition, out of some hardline transition periods, as for example, switch from being under influence of Russia to switching to being under influence or under support and backing of USA and Western societies. Enormous amount of people have been found overnight, literally waiting on them to make a mistake or to provide proper answer on which side they are, and get killed or punished for it. That is bringing us a completely different level of discussion beyond the system. It is bringing us on the level of discussion of human carnage. So most of the time I devoted to discussing actually the concept of human of the planet, and trying to understand the not extremism, but who is having higher right versus extremism of any kind, and then how you deal with extremism and what it is that you call extremism. Is it real extremism, or is it that we talk about deliberately created jungle for the purposes of someone indulging themselves, hunting in the jungle, or living in three time zone, or in three different time ages, as it is Middle East as a hell protocol, cleaning Europe, intermediary, a mild approach, and Western wealth-driven society as a heaven. You have three time dimensions, three different epoch in journey over on this planet, from modern time West to Renaissance or medieval age Europe, to earlier earlier prime times Far East countries. As someone who wants to make living museum out of this planet. So I wasn't immediately to plug into this biological question. It was also about are we not talking about someone holding this planet as a theater from planetary perspective, being planetary platform, planetary human civilization, and overstepping as a god in the way how a planet is being managed, even creating it from some kind of god level, from this kind of highly entertainment purposes. We are talking Disneyland the entire last century, and all of a sudden we spent 21st century speaking about cats and dogs fighting around. What is older? The genetic modification or the creator itself? And here, my attempt was to reach for the real answers of creation as much as I could have plugged into it and take space from the fake rights, fake titles, fake declarations. So here the question of capitalism or socialism became more of a consequent event, something that would be solved afterwards, not ahead, not before we bring on the table these substantially identity-driven questions and civilization-related issues. Bring the discussions on the level of absolute and relative. Bring forward all of the legends as the most reliable historical writings about the actual identity of this planet and history of this planet. So now what I can say about capitalism is, of course, what was evident from the very beginning of my discussion when I pull out here, and I have been talking for quite some time about the real nature of capital, which is very much associated to initial sin, as they want to call it, or initial wrongdoing as a matter of ignition of initial capital, prime capital, that is emerging from positions of wrongdoing, and then capitalism stand on it. That is as you're building a building in a mud, and you know that building is not going to stand there for long. That is what is capitalism. So I'm going still to go into specifics here, and I have some notes made on it, which I'm going to read now, and we see how we are going to conclude on this discussion today. To the extent that capitalism appears as private game with increasingly bigger and bigger chunk of capital and influence, we have here a very closely reached point of monarchy protocol. Well, actually, it is all based on right to be predator, right to be individual, and right to be disrespectful to anything else, to any single life-related principle, because it allows you. You can be benefactor, but you don't have to be. That is capitalism. In monarchy, you are in service of society. I'm sorry, I mean speaking of real monarchy, of course. It is more state level, and state level should be therefore about the issues and problems that are on the ground. But then we have the spoiled kids, capitalists, using most of the money without any need to make any justification or to excuse themselves for a variety of activities under their company names or company capital drawn. But then we have here to compare the two positions. The two positions are non-comparable and equally not sustainable to the extent that capitalism in all of the substance is the most predatory system, and it is reaching the point of globing the bone. Globing the bone means literally sucking out everything in substance. The identity of capitalism is extremely predatory, and today is reaching that level in America that we literally can notice Martians have landed again on Earth and are about to suck out and dry out this planet as well. That is where we are exactly. And to the extent that socialism and Russians wanted to just play the game themselves as well, I'm going to find here now the only way why I criticize socialism is because socialism was not set up as a monarchy, but it was set up as a working class leading platform, and that is where I'm going to correct now socialism. Therefore, the system I'm going to choose is going to be socialism, just in format of monarchy as a monarchical socialism. I understand monarchy as a system of individual stamp to what we add the entire historic duration, the temples, the castles, the history, the certification, the filtration through the entire civilizational ongoing existence, what we delivered through all of the times, what we ended to stamp as a virtue, as a higher accomplishment on the stage of virtue, character, and performance in a given time. Today we talk about political conceptual thinking. I don't think that monarchy can go away without being that place where you are going to, from where you are going to deliver conceptual political thinking as a context on what the state is going to get formatted as a constitutional platform. If monarchy is not constitutional platform, you cannot even spell out the word. And that is how it is important to use the protocol within its own formation, and the protocol within its own natural formation is very much relying on recognition of the next reincarnation. That is why you have protocol Excalibur. You cannot talk protocol, but then you don't live by a protocol. That is absurd. I'm using here monarchy and the full meaning of that notion. I'm not using it in the reference of randomly taken possessions. I'm using it as a notion that exists in its well established stamp, which we should be aware of and we should properly understand it. For accepting or returning to monarchy as the most correct system because it exists on the parameters of guardianship and on the premises of guarding the territories and managing conditions of life. Capitalism is exactly opposite. Capitalism is destructive tissue that emerges from the population. It is losing perspective. It is replacing the society perspective with personal perspective and acts from personal perspective. As such, it is profoundly damaging and it is not sustainable. Capitalism as a system is not sustainable, which means that at some point simply will need to end equally as feudalism needed to end, equally as agricultural driven world needed to end at some point of time, as everything went in the cities. Now we have to say that overextensive going into city will need to end as well. Now we need to correct it again. It went too much on the other side. It will need to stop. We lost the perspective of looking after the state. We lost the perspective looking after the planet. And that is looking after the people. When you say state, looking after the people, of course, and everything that comes in a package. And that is where and why capitalism will need to stop. We are replacing it with state approach and monarchy approach. Monarchy does make sense to the extent that it is bringing that skill, the skill that I deliver here of managing the realm and bring the exact character, bringing the exact capacity, bringing the exact work. Conclusion for today, we need to end capitalism. We need to provide transition from capitalism to state-national system and monarchy protocol as a governing force so we avoid dry military approach and we find ourselves where we find ourselves instead in Star Wars protocol of man society. Man society equally is another extremism. So here, Vatican and male societies that usually are associated to strong religion protocol, any country that is promoting strong religion for that matter, they're actually promoting strong fraternity societies in the substance that is very much in service to capitalism. That is what is going on here. Basically, religion is dog to capitalism. So that altogether will need to be dismantled, because the original formula, original setting here is that religion was actually sainthood level. Saints to the throne, to the monarch, to the monarchy. They have been in service to this overall function of what would be a real spiritual dimension and real spiritual matters. At earlier point of time, spirituality would be much more naturally integrated part of the human dimension. And here, these orders of saints would basically be spiritual practitioners, spiritual people, native, natural, spiritual persons. What today is, it has become very much in service to variety of regimes. They becomes in service to regimes, and regimes became in service to money. That is why I'm connecting directly religion now to capitalism, because in substance, regimes today, political regimes, are completely and totally in service to money. They have become servants to capitalism accordingly. Now, I'm getting a bit angry at fraternity. Not angry, but I'm categorizing categorizing them in category of fools. Um, uh, Being locked in the buildings just because they're actually technically fools. Kids being locked into that. We're listening all these unacceptable stories getting out of that. That order is order. We talk here about uh, the returning to much more normal or natural living, to civil level of such functions, and that would be closer to Buddhism, for example, where cultural identity will be much more bringing to attention the energetic function of our bodies, and paying attention to our overall mental conditions, bringing attention to attending our bodies in most comprehensive way. When you compare Christian religion with Buddhism, Buddhism also brings certain temple level. We have to look now how it's going to function um, in the reform conditions. Today we have a technology, whatever the challenges, does not need that much human attendance. Now going to whatever challenges. Listening some strange noises out there, suggesting that is exactly what they're doing here. That would be therefore suggesting that the technology is being used as a guardianship versus me. Well, I am declaring guarding the planet rather against the shadows. So I have on mind exactly here shadows. Speaking of such function of churches and religious former. And that is exactly what they have been around about. And I have to notice that they have managed to deliver the engaged presence on the territories, on parameters of extreme political polarizations, without explaining to general population on what parameters they are delivering certain identities, from what positions and what cultural setting is to be associated to it, including the international dimensions. So now, what I'm saying is, you're not going to drag me in unpaid work to deal with the situation while I'm claiming the throne. This is black on white, or rather white on black. I claim today the throne. I claim that this entire work is to be associated to such declared position. I'm claiming the throne of sunlight, not a throne of shadows. But I understand that nothing is simple here. However, I command total order, not total control. The difference is conduct, of course, approach as well. I am a woman. I speak teaching. I speak gentle approach. I speak behavior, soul, sensitivity. To say just human will never be clear enough. It is to talk about stamp as well. It should be clear enough where we are on this endless conversation so far. I declare the throne. I declare it. I do not fight for it. I declare it. It is nothing to fight about. It is a stamp. Each time it should be about recognizing it. That is all. This planet does have its identity, and now it does have its historic identity as well. That is where we are right now. Now here the question becomes the question of code of human itself, the question of us declaring humanity today and human dimension on earth, not monarchy that is trying to be a human or pretending to be a human. We all gain that impression that in the way how monarchy of England, especially monarchy of England, as a principal monarchy, one would say the most exposed one to the general population, appears there as one trying to be a human rather than to declaring humanity. Now, what is the difference here? Is that you end up living in the shadows while instead to live by teaching and declaring humanity. Now, one cannot teach what one is not and what one does not know how to be. That is how important becomes what we declare a throne on this planet, what can be a throne, and what throne cannot be on this planet. Therefore, this is not anymore question of historic heritage. It has become question of recognizing the realm, declaring the realm, and declaring protocol human. It became question of declaring the planet. Above all, and there we talk historic heritage, as far as it can be applicable, and when it can be applicable, and in the aspects upon which it can be applicable. But this has become teaching again, and I cannot accept the title of Mary Poppins, because this is not Mary Poppins protocol. This is protocol monarchy. This is protocol throne of humanity. And if that throne cannot speak and teach humanity, then it is not human enough. That is, regretfully, what we have to talk about today and where we have to draw the lines as humans of this planet. In conclusion to capitalism and discussion about capitalism, therefore, capitalism cannot be alternative to society of men. In contrary, I am pulling out monarchy exactly because I want to demonstrate to demonstrate that it is about returning woman as a significant player in the society, because the society is in substance is built out of families, and families basically are defined by a woman. Technically, it is recalibrating societies on much more original force of universal force of organized society. It is going to bring much more sensitivity, responsibility, and efficiency, of course. With responsibility comes sufficiently efficiency. To correct here, therefore, the alternative to capitalism cannot be society of men. I will just add, when discussing capitalism, that capitalism should not be understood as detached from the previous stages or ages. In substance, capitalism is nothing of detached from the previous times. In substance, capitalism is just ongoing story and of 2 millenniums. So today that we have to deal with 2 millenniums minimum, at least 2 millenniums of recalibration on the principal civilizational parameters. capitalism become criticized because of such affiliation, because in substance that is what capitalism today still it is existing as exactly on such foundations, and that is why we have to deal with it. Not because it represents some kind of latest 20th century or 19th century, late 19th century adventure. No, because it has not moved away from its roots, from the roots of the earliest of the capital formations. It has not moved for an inch away from it. That is why today we need to deal with it. And to say that we are going to talk about state rather ultimately indicates that in substance we also need to talk about planetary approaches here in the way how I have been discussing today the humanity itself, and bring this kind of guardianship, planetary guardianship upon these matters, including and especially when it comes to how we generate capital. That is to what capitalism today hangs on. How we define the initial generation of capital, and also that we find today so many people in capitalism become very much used to play as a big boys, as a big kids, on the top of the planet, surfacing everything else on earth, holding themselves literally as gods of Olymp. Now, gods of Olymp were not about economy. They were about managing the world. And that is what will need to be noticed now as simply, profoundly wrong approach. And offensive, actually, to the entire history of living, of humanity on this planet. Offensive for the concept of humanity itself. I'm finding it profoundly offensive. I find myself profoundly offended by such capitalism that found people of my kind outside their corridors. Today, I'm not the one intervening for no any other reasons, but because some of us that are actually discussing the civilization on any important aspects cannot be excluded by a system and that system expect to be included now. That is absurd. That is absurd. So the main question is here, can these people even call that area and that arena as their right? Or it is area on what we need to accuse them as Judas, as that tribe running away from the rest of the tribes with all of the money and all of the wealth and not turning their head back. So we are not discussing exactly capitalism here. We are discussing the actual story behind capitalism.